Coming to you live from Roundhouse Studios in Knock'em-Stiff, Ohio. It's American Exceptionalism with Scooter.
He has all the ingredients for disaster.
And El Scorcho.
He wants to be human.
American Exceptionalism is the place to highlight everything exceptional about the greatest nation on the planet.
It's gonna be awesome.
And now, Scooter and El Scorcho.
South of Waco, hell, down at a place called Papa Joe's. I heard him say so.
Welcome to American Exceptionalism. He's Scooter, I'm El Scorcho, and we love America.
Can I get an amen?
Yes, sir, brother. How you doing, Scooter?
Good, man. That's the first time I've heard that intro song. I'm wondering where he's going with that. Where do you want it?
That's Whitey Morgan in the 78s.
Yeah.
That's good country
That was good
music
stuff right there.
Heck yeah.
Might have been an old joke. He said something about Waco, south of Waco.
Yeah.
You know what Waco stands for, don't you?
What's that?
We ain't coming out.
Well, there's some truth behind that, I guess.
Well, I mean, that was what, 20, 25 years ago?
Yeah, I remember watching that live on TV.
We ain't coming out.
Yeah.
Waco, Texas. I don't know. The album says born, raised, and live from Flint, Michigan.
Up there where the water's brown.
Or full of lead or something, right?
Yeah.
Flint,
Looks like
Michigan.
bourbon coming out of the faucet.
No, that'd be heaven. That ain't Flint, Michigan. That's a bad joke considering we've got a pastor coming on here today.
Yeah, Pastor Matt Clark, right?
Yep, great guy. Going to come on here and talk about some of another great thing about the U.S. of A., the ability for religious freedom.
You can't talk about the United States of America without bringing up the fact that part of the reason we're here is for religious freedom.
Absolutely. I mean, this country was founded on Christian principles. It even says it on the money. In God we trust.
Yep.
It's been that way since 1776, and I don't know why the reason we need to seem to change that now, but
yeah,
we'll get into that with Pastor Matt. So you got anything positive for us?
I was thinking about this the other day. We might throw a little positive spin into this, something, maybe an episode we like to call News You Might Have Missed.
All right.
You want to ask yourself why you missed it, though, Scooter.
Why did I miss it? Because I'm not watching the news?
That's right. It doesn't fit the agenda of the mainstream media.
Oh, all right.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know.
See where we're going here?
Yeah.
Fake news.
Fake news. There's some truth to that.
We're going to turn around. We're going to turn our back on that crap.
All right. So what did I miss somewhere?
We'll start out with Dateline, Lincoln, Nebraska. The University of Nebraska football, this actually did make the news. They put out, in approach of the anniversary of September 11th, they put out a video to kind of pay homage to those that were lost on September 11th and to also pay their respects to those that continue to serve this country to this day. They have a football player who was a former U.S. Navy SEAL. His name's Damian Jackson. Like I said, this did make the news. If you had a chance to see this video, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, just Google Navy SEAL, Nebraska football, and the video pop up. It's cool. It's worth your time. And every time I watch it, I get a tear in my eye. Damien Jackson basically graduated high school, went into the United States Navy, and then eventually the SEALs. And once he concluded his service to America, he went home and had that conversation with his mom, basically what's next. And he told his mom, I want to go to college. I want to get an education. I want to play football. She said, well, you never played football before in your life. And he said, well, I think I can do it. And he went on, eventually walked on to the University of Nebraska. He's been there for a few years now. I think he's played defensive end, outside linebacker. I think it said somewhere in what I read, he taught himself the long snap, and he's hoping that somewhere in that skill set he'll find a spot on an NFL roster someday. The part that didn't make the news, and it's kind of the story behind the story, and this is what intrigued me to this. He was asked, why did he get involved in this video? And he said, one, it was an opportunity to say thank you to everyone that serves in this present day. On a daily basis, the people that go out and protect our freedoms here on the home front, police, fire, EMS, military personnel in the form of National Guard and reservists. So if you think about that, I thought that was very cool. Here's a former Navy SEAL, and he recognizes the sacrifice that's being made on a daily basis here at home. And he said that was an opportunity for him to say thank you. The other thing that got me was in this interview, why did you get involved? He said, America is the greatest country on the planet. And he said, nowhere else can you pursue a dream. Nowhere else in the world can you pursue a dream as far as you absolutely want to take it. And that struck me as pretty cool. And that didn't get a lot of airtime on the news because, it probably doesn't fit their agenda. Here's a guy that loves his country so much that he's willing to go out on a limb and embrace the flag. And especially in a day and age when it's vogue to trash the country and throw it under the bus and demean it and all this stuff.
Kneel during the national anthem.
Yeah, and here's a guy that says, "No, I'm not going to do that." Hats off to the University of Nebraska football. Instead of finding a way to let their guys protest America, put all kinds of crap on the back of the jersey or on the back of the helmet, they say, "Nah, we're going to go the other direction. We're going to embrace the flag. We're going to embrace our pride in this country." I thought it was very well done. It was a class act. And lastly, to Damian Jackson, thank you for your service, man. You are a true example of what an American patriot looks like. And I would go as far as say, anytime you want to come join us on this podcast, you are more than welcome. We have an open mic for you.
Absolutely. We need to try and do that. We need to try and get him on
I think that'd be absolutely cool to have Damien Jackson on this. So if you're listening, buddy, you can get a hold of us. Like I said, we got an open mic for you anytime.
Yeah, let's get to work on that. And as I'm sitting here listening to it, I mean, my oldest daughter's starting to think about colleges, and not real seriously, but Nebraska's made her initial list of places to look at, and I'm sitting here thinking maybe we need to look a little harder at the University of Nebraska for what Nebraska stands for. I would just encourage people to put some thought into that when you're looking at different, places you can do business or give your business to. Support those organizations that go out of their way to visually show what they stand for and what they support. So we'll have to check that out. But, man, what'd you say he plays? Outside linebacker, defensive end?
He's been there a few years, and he's kind of bounced around a little bit. It sounded like he plays a little defensive end, outside linebacker. And he said he taught himself the long snap. Said he watched a bunch of YouTube videos and got pretty good at it. So
I would hate to be an opposing running back coming through the hole, staring down the face of that guy who's just been trained to roundhouse kick a terrorist.
He's a big dude. I think the article I read said from the time he entered the Navy SEALs till the time he ended his service, he put on, I think, 60 or 70 pounds of muscle. And they had some excerpts from people that he served with, and his brother chimed in and said, Damien is a real deal. Like they have not been able to find his quit level, and his level of work is off the charts. And even one of the coaches said he started leading some of the workouts on the Nebraska football team, and they came to him and said, "Hey, back it down a bit because some of our guys are, starting to stress and strain some things, and we want them to be ready to, play on Saturday." Yeah. So, yeah, real deal. And like I said, if you haven't seen the video, look it up. It's well worth your time.
And I'm sure he's probably the ultimate teammate, too. I mean, that's part of the brotherhood and of everything of the SEALs. I mean, you got to go – if you're going into war, you got to know that guy over there's got your back. And I know maybe it's a bad analogy. I mean, football and war are a little bit different story. But if you're getting in the trenches, I'm sure you want that guy on your team.
When you look at the history of college football, I saw a story where they said football first was introduced in the college ranks in the Ivy Leagues, and they did it because they wanted to develop men. And it was the closest thing to war that they could put their men through without actually putting them in harm's way. So there is some truth to that. But when you talk about leadership, they talked about Damien entering the locker room. This guy, I can't imagine being a coach and having this guy walk into your door and say, "Hey, man, I want to be a part of this team." I mean, that's like a gift from God, I would think, as far as a football coach is concerned.
Good for Nebraska.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, that's news you might have missed.
That's good stuff right there. We'll keep doing this type of stuff on each segment, news you might have missed, and try to put some positive spin on everything out there. So, all right, hang with us for a few minutes. We're going to go head to a break. We're coming out of the break. We're going to have Pastor Matt Clark get into it with us here on American Exceptionalism.
Get rid of the bourbon.
Yeah, we got to trade it out for milk, right?
Yeah, hide that stuff.
Or wine, right? All right, folks, bear with us, or we'll be back in a couple minutes.
Hey, American Exceptionalism podcast listeners. Yes, you. If you're wondering, how do you get started in voiceovers? This is where you stop wondering, because I'm the guy that can teach you how. My name is Ron Allen. I own Big Voice Productions, and I have trained over 500 people in the art and the business of voiceover. Imagine using your voice at home to serve customers who will pay you great money to voice their messages, which could be telephone messages, radio commercials, TV commercials, internet videos. The sky is the limit. How about audiobooks? You want to find out more? Check me out at bigvoiceproductions.com and let's get you started on a career in voiceover.
All right, welcome back, listeners. Today on the show, we've got Matt Clark, a pastor at Genoa Baptist Church, Westerville, Ohio. Awesome to have you here, Matt.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. I'm super excited about this.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, no problem.
So on the show, as we know, we talk about everything exceptional about the United States of America, going back all the way to its foundation to present day. And one of the things, the principles that America was founded on was a set of Christian values. As we were saying in our intro, it's even on the money. In God we trust, right?
There we go.
You know, and since 1776, our country has been based on those Christian principles. It seems like we maybe have gotten a little bit away from them as a nation, but I don't see the reason to change it for now.
Agreed.
Yeah. So
For now, forever.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah, we don't ever need to change that. But no, we thought we'd bring a pastor on here to talk about his work as a pastor and his experiences. And then maybe we'll get into it as where he thinks, what's the future of America look like for the next 1-2 generations and beyond. So
Yeah. I'll be honest. I tend to be an optimistic guy generally. The direction I see us going as a country worries me a little bit. I'll be honest with you guys. And I think that's part of the reason why you guys are doing this podcast, right? Is we're trying to preserve things of this country that are worth preserving. And obviously religious freedom is a huge part of that.
So how long you been in ministry? Tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah. I've been in ministry for 13, 14 years, something like that. A little less than I've been married. So I got married and then I joined ministry shortly after.
Now, you're a young guy. How old are you?
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, at least you look young.
Yeah, I get that a lot. You know, I'm 38, right?
Okay.
And people they say, oh, you don't seem that old, but typically it's mentally speaking. They say you don't act like a 38-year-old, and I'm like, is that a compliment?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, appreciate that, but
It's kind of like a backhanded comment.
yeah, that's right. I was like, I'll take it. I mean, that's fine. But yeah, I'm 38. I've got I've been married for 14 years. I have 4 kids. I always say they make us old but keep us young at the same time.
You're a busy man.
That's right, man. I got a good looking wife, man. So that plays into it. But yeah, 4 kids. My oldest is a girl. I got 3 boys, and yeah, they're pretty awesome. So
That's great.
yeah, but I went into ministry. I went to college for music. So originally I was going to do worship ministry was going to be where I went. And then, you know, I joined this church because my wife grew up at this church. I'm not from here. I'll tell you really quickly. I know we're short on time here, but I'm an Air Force brat. So my dad was in the military, and I actually grew up overseas in England for 12 years.
Did you really?
Yeah, I moved there when I was 3, and then I came back, 14 or 15, something like that. I love our country, you know. My dad, I think that was just instilled in us at a young age because he was military, and we lived on this Air Force base in England, and at 5 o'clock every day, the national anthem would play. Everybody would stop with their hand on their heart as they were taking the flag down. Yeah, so it's like my dad instilled that. He's like, greatest country ever. And I totally agree. And all that to say, I love what you guys are doing.
That's very cool.
Well, yeah, it's cool too because I mean, as you may or may not know, I know Scorcho knows, but I do a lot of work with Folds of Honor, provide educational scholarships for our nation's fallen and disabled for the families and spouses. But you know, the interesting thing about that, when the flag is folded, it's folded 13 times, and there's a ton of. I don't know if you've ever studied.
No, I did
that.
not know
I mean,
that,
if you look at it, each flag has different meaning for each fold, but there is a lot of spiritual references in each significant fold of the flag before it's handed to the nation's fallen. And at Folds of Honor's, your story reminded me of something. At Folds of Honor's headquarters out in Owasso, Oklahoma, they have a huge flag that you can see for miles. I think it's flying like 80 or 90 feet in the air.
Love it.
And every day at 1300, the entire staff at the entire facility stops what they're doing. They go outside, put their hand over their heart, and they play taps.
That's awesome.
It is so moving.
Oh, man. It's hard for me to hear taps and not tear up.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Exactly.
Especially at funerals. Like when you go to a funeral and you hear, like if it's the person who passed was in the military and they play man, it gets me every time.
Yeah. And this facility has a golf course on property as well. And it's pretty moving to see a guy mowing a fairway or mowing whatever. And at 1300 at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, he gets off his mower.
Wow.
I mean, it's just, it's amazing. And I didn't know that about you. So
yeah.
That's pretty cool.
thank you for your service.
Hey, well, my dad, yeah.
The family serve.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Thank
I look
you.
at it that
They
way.
definitely sacrifice. That's for sure.
Yeah, the family sacrifice. So.
Yeah, my mom would appreciate that. Yeah, my dad, he would go overseas for a couple of like months at a time and come back and stuff. So yeah, it was
So when you're stationed in England and you go overseas, does that mean he comes to America?
Well, I was thinking more
the
Middle
other
East, Europe. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, that's
yeah.
right. The other direction, yeah. But yeah, so anyways, I moved to North Carolina when I was 15-ish, 14, 15. And then talk about culture shock, man. I went from posh England to the redneck South, and that was pretty...
Posh England.
Yeah. Oh man, it was funny because my mom was British, so half of my family is British, and so that was the reason my dad got to stay so long over there. Like I would have friends every 3 years, and then they would be stationed at different bases. So, so I'm very out of sight, out of mind. I don't know if it's a great thing, but like I don't know. Like it's easy for me to move on and assimilate, because I grew up that way. And so when I moved to the States, I remember, I'll tell you this real quick story. I'm sitting in class. And I didn't know anything about North Carolina. Well, this guy walks up to me and he's got dip all in his mouth, and I'm sitting next to the trash can. He just spits into the trash can. He's like, "Welcome to America." And I said, "Wow, I don't even know what you're spitting out, but it looks interesting." so it's pretty funny. But
What was it? Tea and crumpets?
yeah, tea, crumpets. We wear our kilts. Oh, that's Scotland. Sorry, but. But
Fish and chips.
There it is, fish and chips. Oh, man, my mom lived and died by fish and chips. She loved fish and chips.
I was fortunate enough to go to England. My parents took me when I was high school.
Oh, cool.
I loved fish and chips.
Yeah, man.
Like legit fish and chips.
That's right. Wrapped in the newspaper.
In an actual
That's
newspaper.
Right. Yeah.
It was good stuff.
I remember they did a study. They're like, we think the ink might not be good for you from the newspaper. And it was like, who cares?
Yeah. You got it all over your hands anyway.
Yeah, who cares? I was in North Carolina. I ended up going to a school called Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia.
Yeah.
So that's where I got my
Great
undergrad.
school.
It was amazing. I loved it there, except for the student debt. But other than that, it was pretty good. But I met my wife there. And, the plan was for me just to go into music at a church and do music. And then I realized pretty quickly that I felt like God had put a calling on my life to do ministry. When I got that calling, I thought it was just going to be music, but really I think it was just ministry in general. And so since I've been working at Genoa, I started in doing worship just for the youth group, kind of get my foot in the door. And then Pastor Frank, who's our pastor at the church, said, "Hey, if you want to work full time, I can't pay you to do just music, but if you want to do kids ministry also." I hadn't done kids ministry before, but I was like, "Hey, I'll give it a shot." It got me. I worked at a bank. I was like, "Get me out of the bank and stuff, and that'd be kind of cool." So I started doing kids ministry, and I fell in love with it. Like I fell in love with this idea of being able to help teach children the Bible at a young age, and they grow older. And what's cool is our last youth pastor, when he left, they offered me the position in youth ministry, which is 6th to 12th grade. And so I stepped into there, and I've got kids. What's funny is I'm doing weddings now for kids that I had in kids ministry all the way now, which makes me feel super old, but it's pretty rewarding, like to see kind of come alongside these families at such a young age all the way up till graduation.
That's awesome.
So
what's a day in the life of the pastor look like?
A lot of coffee. No, just kidding. Some coffee for sure. There's a lot of, for me personally, there's a lot of event planning that we do for youth ministry. Social media is an aspect that we try to get into as well. Sermon prep, and then frankly, just doing whatever Pastor Frank has us do.
Sure.
There's days we'll show up to work and he says, "Hey, elderly lady needs help moving her house. Let's pack up and go," and we'll go and do it. And so,
Genoa is a large church, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
It's about 1,500 people.
Like there's so many, you have to have multiple services on Sunday, correct?
Most of the time that I've been there, we've done 2 services. For a while, we did Saturday services, but once COVID hit, we dropped those out. But we just built a new building, so our auditorium seats a lot more people. So we'll probably just stick with 2. But
It's a beautiful new facility. Just opened about a month ago, right?
Yeah, I think exactly a month. We've had 4 services in there, so we love it.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize how busy a pastor can be. I mean, a lot of them think, okay, they just work on Sunday. Probably so far from the truth, I'm sure, as you can attest to, because we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel of a national pandemic, and there were a lot of illnesses and a lot of deaths, unfortunately. A lot of people needed prayer at end of life and
absolutely,
comfort or just assistance with any various tasks that they might just have to get through their daily lives. So,
well, I know with youth ministry, I was pretty burdened when I would text and call some of these students during the lockdown. I mean, a lot of students, there was a lot of spiritual decline during COVID, especially with our students. Like there was students that I knew were making pretty good progress, and I felt like they were growing in their relationship with God. And then COVID hit, and they're just on Netflix all day, and they're stuck in their room, and they're on social media all day. And I think we all agree, like if all you see is what the media puts out on social media and stuff like that. It can be a pretty depressing place,
Yeah.
I always tell people, I'm like, stop watching the news for a little while if you want to kind of feel better, because things are rough, and when I talked to a pastor about it, we ended up, our youth group came back a little earlier than our church did in terms of meeting in person. But we took precautions. We met outside. We tried to not be inside. And if we were, we split our seats up. But we followed the guidelines at the time. This was last year. But like I said, a lot of spiritual decline. And so we felt the necessity. We're like, we gotta get our kids back into the Bible. We got to get them back into church and stuff. And I'll say it's funny, like our youth group has grown since COVID. I think people are ready to get back. I think they're ready to, especially students. They were like, I got to get out of my house. I gotta be around people. I think we underestimate the importance of just interaction, like we're doing now, talking face to face and stuff. And
it's almost like a hunger. You're starved for something, and then when you get the opportunity to come back, you come back even more, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're on a diet. This is a poor example, but you're on a diet, but then you get that opportunity to eat, and you're like, oh, I'm eating. It's the same thing. There's a void in their lives for the word, and once they get an opportunity to get back, maybe they're they missed what they had, took it for granted maybe a little bit.
I know I did.
I think everybody did. Or it made you reassess your life and say, all right, what's important? I think you figured out who your friends were, right? Because you're just those people that weren't your friends. They were eliminated from your daily interaction of life, whether it's going to work or going to school. And and I'm glad you brought that up because it was a tough time for kids.
Still is.
Yeah.
I think.
For sure.
Yeah. Hey, I recently read a book. It was a great book. The title was "How Do You Kill 11 Million People?" Have you ever heard of that?
Nope.
All right. So when you hear that, I mean, what do you think that book's going to be about?
How do you kill 11 million people?
Yeah.
I don't know.
First thing that jumps in my mind is the Nazis.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, tyranny or something like authoritarian.
Yeah, and that's exactly where. And actually, I think the amount of people killed by the Nazi regime was like 11,280,000. As the author talks, it's hard to put context around that. How do you kill 11 million people? And when you put the word people behind it, it becomes unfathomable. But I'll just go ahead and throw it out there. And he says, how do you kill 11 million people? You lie to them. And basically, that's what Hitler did. He lied to them, told them that they were going to places that they would, be able to provide for their families and great places and everything like that. But the author also talks about where we're at as a country. And he talks about, one, you have to know what your absolute truth is. And once you know your absolute truth, you have to elect people. You have to make choices on where you cast your vote, where that looks like. And he talks about the stages of a nation that you go through. And I'll run through them here. He talks about any nation starts out one in bondage. They progress to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to courage, from courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance, from abundance to complacency, from complacency to apathy, from apathy to dependence, and then from dependence back to bondage. And it's just a cycle that nations go through. So, I mean, where do you think America's at? Spiritually, you can look back in history and you can look at, all right, we were bondage.
Yeah.
We were, the country you lived in England, spiritual faith.
Right.
Which led to courage.
Yeah.
Which led to liberty. And then we went through our periods of abundance. And you can kind of see where he's going with that. I mean, to me, the absolute truth is the Bible. Our country seems to want to rewrite the Bible. I don't think it needs rewritten. I think it needs reread. So I would just love your opinion and where this country's at, where it's going, and where it might be in that cycle.
I think as a country, the dependence one I see big time.
I think we're right in it right now.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when 9/11 happened, I was 19, I think. I had just graduated pretty recently. And I remember, do you guys remember when the Patriot Act came out?
Yes.
And they were saying, we're going to set this up so that we can listen in on everybody's phone calls and stuff. Yeah. And at the time, I was super okay with that. I was like, I'm not a terrorist. I ain't got nothing to hide. But now it's like I look back on my 19-year-old self and I go, you were that willing to just give up your freedom. And I think I see a lot of that with COVID. Fear has a strong tendency to get people to give up freedom and you become dependent, right? And so when I see all this COVID stuff happening and all this stuff that people are trying to put in place, and I'm just like, well, hold on, guys, let's remember that we're free, right? We should have these freedoms. And in terms of spiritually speaking, I think the apathy one is probably where I see us at a lot. I see this in youth ministry a lot. I think wealth has a way of bringing comfortability, and you tend to You don't fear for your next meal. You don't fear for, like, we as Christians in this country, I'm not scared that the government's going to come in and kill us right now, right? Like, that's not a fear that I have right now, you know?
Yeah.
Not saying it's not going to be that way eventually. We don't know yet, right?
Yeah.
I think it was, what was it, Reagan said, we're only one generation away from tyranny, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, it could happen, right? And this is why, like, people think that America, that it could never go that way. Well, it could, right? I mean, there have been nations that do this. And so, but when it comes to the apathy, I definitely see that. So, and I say, again, I gauge this on students because that's who my ministry is, but students can be pretty apathetic. You know, they just don't really care. You know, I mean, they know that they're going to go home to a meal every night. They know that they're going to go home to a roof over their head. And it tends to make them a little less urgent in terms of sharing the gospel, in terms of living out their faith. And I mean, the irony of it is that when things are easy, you don't tend to appreciate them as much. I remember when I was a kid, I wanted to get a Nintendo 64. Do you guys remember those?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah, old school, man. And it was the first like 3D games that came out, and I remember Mario and all that. Well, my friend got one, and I told my dad, I said, hey, I'd love to get a 64. Can you buy me one? And he says, there's no chance, but I'll tell you what, I'll drive you to mow yards of our people at our church. And so I did that all summer. And I saved up. I bought the Nintendo myself. And I mean, you would have thought it was like a shrine. I cleaned it every day. I wrapped the remote controllers in a certain way. And my sisters would come in and I'd be like, don't touch it, you know. But I appreciated it because of the hard work that went into it. What I see with our faith nowadays is that it's not hard to be a Christian in the United States. I really believe that. I think it's like we don't have any fear of persecution, not in ways that we see in other countries, but it's led to apathy. Like if you look at churches in China and Iran, they say those are two of the fastest growing churches in the world. And you would think, wait a minute, China, they're throwing people in camps. I mean, they're aggressively stopping people from this. Iran and, you know, I mean, the Middle East in general, we see what's happening in Afghanistan. I mean, they're going door to door. If they find the Bible app on your phone, they either kill you or throw you in prison. That's not stuff we deal with. But the irony is, why is the church growing so big over there? It's persecution has a way of growing the church because it kind of weeds out the fake and it rises up the real. And I think in our country, with it being so easy, it's caused a lot of people to maybe be Christian by name only, but not like if a gun is to your head, would you lay down your life for the sake of the gospel? It worries me. It worries me about the apathetic attitude of some Christians in America. And this is why, like, we do mission trips every year. And that's one of the things I love to show them is I love to take kids to other countries and say, like, I went to Cambodia a couple years ago with my friend. And man, when we got back.
That's pretty ambitious.
Yeah.
Oh, seriously.
Now that I didn't take the youth group to Cambodia. We took them to Dominican Republic. But my friend took me who does some orphanages over there. He has an organization that does it. And I remember I went to Cambodia. I'm looking around and I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. You know, the Khmer Rouge, all the genocide that happened after Vietnam and stuff. And when I got back to Columbus Airport, I remember as soon as we came out of the terminal, I promise this happened, I got on my knees and I kissed the ground and I said, thank God I live in America because we got it so good here. Yeah.
I'm starting to tear up. That's awesome.
Yeah. It gave me an appreciation. And I want our youth to see this as well, like to say, hey, listen, don't think that America is the bubble that the world lives in. Like we are the greatest nation. I have no problem saying that. I think when America is better, the world is better. And like when I take these kids, we took them to Dominican Republic, and I mean there's kids living in cardboard huts, and a lot of our kids are just like, man, we really got it good in the States. I'm like, yeah make it count.
Yeah,
you know, make it count.
It's hard to find a kid that's not dressed in tennis shoes and clothes and. You know, it goes home to a meal. And I know there's a lot of kids that go without, but when you compare what you have, and you may think it's minimal here in America, the kid goes over to someplace like Cambodia.
Right.
Man, it could get a lot worse.
That's right. One of our translators that was with us, we took him to lunch, and we'd found this, like, brand new mall. It was the craziest thing, because in Cambodia, severe poverty. However, there's countries that are building within the capital city there. And we go into this mall that looked like Polaris. I mean, it was gorgeous. And I was like,
really?
It's so weird to go into this mall that's so great. And then 2 streets over, it's like people are starving and stuff. But it was weird. But we go into the mall, we take this translator and I said, hey, let me get your lunch for you. And he goes, oh, I could never do that. And I was like, it's fine. I'll get your lunch. He orders like an egg roll. It was like a side. And I said, no, get a meal. It's fine. And I said, tell you what, you just get what I'm getting. Everything over there is cheaper. It was like a $5 meal. But the guy looked at me, he goes, you can afford $5? And I said, yeah, I got it, man. And he was so thankful and was just like, oh my goodness. To him, $5 was, $500 it felt like, And so again, it was one of those things my friend shared that I was with. We walked away and I was just like, we've got it so good in America. Why?
Doesn't compare exactly, but I have a neighbor that grew up in South Africa.
Okay.
He's eventually come to America and he's now an American citizen. But he's, at the time, I don't know if it's still the case, every male that turns 18 has to do 2 years in the military in South Africa.
Right.
At the age of 18 or 19, it's either 2 or 3 years, but age of 18 or 19, he was involved in a war, some sort of civil war in South Africa, right? Mm-hmm. He said coming out of that, you can't help but grow up and you can't help but appreciate what you have. And I think that's the part of the problem here in America. These kids grow up, most of them, wanting for very little.
Right.
So you take it for granted and you become apathetic. And I think there's something to be said about, getting off the couch, getting outside, putting yourself out there, like not necessarily in harm's way, but I'm saying, take that job and rub elbows with people that are struggling or make ends meet on a monthly basis, right? See what a father of 3 has to go through and get that understanding that, hey, I got it pretty good because mom and dad are out there busting their rear ends for me. At some point I got to be that guy or I got to be that girl that gets out there and does it for somebody else. So I see your point, as far as, kids just apathy. And that's the next generation. That's who we're relying on.
That's right. And, we've got perspective is everything, right?
Yeah.
And in America, I do feel like it's easy to have an inaccurate perspective of what life is. Again, in terms of how bad it could be. When we go to these other countries and stuff, I'm like, guys, this is life for so many people. Go to India. Good Lord. India is like, they've got just tons of people that are, perspective is huge. And that's why, I always try to teach the kids this accurate perspective and stuff like that. A lot of them, it just kind of falls flat, because they don't really get it. I remember when I was in high school, I had this girl in my class. Her dad had bought her this, I think it was an Eclipse, like a sports car type thing. And the teacher let us go out and see it. And it was this nice car. I was like, man, that's not the car I drove when I first started driving. My dad got me a 1970 Ford pickup for my first automobile. That was old when I got it,
You wish you still had it, probably, don't you?
Oh, man, I loved that truck. That truck was so sweet.
I think the first thing I drove was a Chevy Chevette. Remember those things?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
A little tiny box.
Yeah, man, those things were sweet.
Yeah, it wasn't a luxury.
Yeah. Well,
it was a vet, not a Corvette, a Chevette.
And they used to call it a shove-it, not a
shove-it. Yeah. You're like, whatever. Yeah, but my dad, he pulled the truck up and it was like no power brakes, no power steering, and no AC in North Carolina.
Nice.
I was like, Dad, you're the worst. And then I fell in love with that truck.
We fit right in with that guy that said, "Welcome to America," right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we started carpooling. No, I'm just kidding.
Get a shotgun rack. And
that's right.
Carpool meant 8 kids in the bed, right?
Yeah. Oh, man, it was great. But this girl, she gets this nice new car and she goes out there and her dad's got balloons all over it. And he's like, I got you a car. And she goes, it was like blue. And she goes, I wanted the red one.
Oh, my God.
And I remember sitting there even as a teenager, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
That is crazy. I was like, I got a red truck you can have. I got that right over here. But
if I was that dad, I'd be handing her a bicycle or something. Like
that's right.
That's ungrateful.
Yeah. But again, perspective, right?
Yeah.
Wealth does tend to blind you a little bit. Again, the irony of it is that why is the suicide rate in America so high? The depression rate is so high. We're higher than a vast majority of other countries, yet we're the wealthiest. Honestly, I think it's when you're putting your faith and your hope into something other than God, that's inevitably the outcome.
Sure. Yeah, you got to have your absolute truth, right?
Yeah, that's it. And I appreciate you said that earlier about the Bible. I think there's debate as to whether America is a Christian nation, but I don't think there's any debate over the fact that we were founded on Judeo-Christian values. Mm-hmm. The 10 Commandments, right? You can live, I won't even say the 10 Commandments, but like the Bible, you can follow the Bible and not go to prison for anything, That's not the same with Islam. Like you come over here, if you try living out Sharia law in America, it contradicts our law because we weren't founded on Islamic values. It was Judeo-Christian. I don't know where I was going with that, but
anyway, well, the author, he talks about nations that I ran through those stages that a nation goes through. And then he says, then they fall into the shampoo treatment, rinse and repeat.
Oh, got it.
So, whether we're in a state of apathy or a state of dependence, I think, maybe it's somewhere in the middle. The rinse and repeat process goes back to bondage. Mm-hmm. Do you think that we could break the cycle and go back to spiritual faith?
100%.
I hope so.
Yeah. This sounds bad, but I don't fear, again, I said it earlier, the world is a better place when America is good, right? Like we're a great nation. We believe in freedom, all this stuff. But in terms of Christianity, like I said earlier, Christianity seems to flourish when things are not great. Like the early church in the book of Acts, I mean, they were killed, they were thrown in prison, they were scattered about, yet it grew at incredible rates. And I think it's because the perspective changes. This is what Christianity truly is. This is what it is. It's living my life for Christ no matter what. And what's the problem is when that persecution goes away, I think there's a warped view as to what Christianity is. In fact, I think a lot of people probably have a pretty inaccurate view of Christianity nowadays, what it takes to truly be a Christian. All that to say, I do think we can go back. I've got faith in Christ. I put all of my hope in God, and I think God can do anything. I think really the question is, will God allow it to go back? Maybe. Like people have told me this often. They'll just be like, I think God has removed his hand of blessing on America. I pray that that's not true. I mean, yeah. But we are a nation that has turned away from God. I mean, there's no denying that. There's reasons, but for sure we are not. I don't think that we are a nation that fully believes in God anymore. And I say that in general, right?
Sure. But
spiritually speaking, I actually, when we're talking about teenagers and stuff, I'm pretty optimistic about the next generation. After saying all this stuff about how negative it is with the wealth and all that stuff, I actually feel good about it because what I'm seeing is I see a lot of kids that are kind of kicking back against what's kind of becoming the status quo now. For instance, I've got students who come up to me and they're just like, I'm not going to say the things my school is going to make me say. I'm not going to do the things my school is going to make me do. Politically speaking, I like that. I'm just like, okay, yes, like it's that conservative values and stuff. But spiritually speaking, I'm hoping that translates as well. Like, that's right. Like if it ever comes to the point where the government says you're not allowed to pray and read your Bibles, like, are you going to kick back against that? Are you going to do it no matter what? I see a lot of things that worry me about these next coming generations, but I'm also optimistic that I do feel like there are students that are rising up that are just like, we're tired of being told what to say. We're tired of being told this, that we can't do this and do this. And I'm optimistic.
When you get a chance, listen to the previous episode we alluded to the 22-year-old Wilson that we had in here. Your optimism will increase tenfold. Oh, okay. After listening to that guy.
Very cool. Yeah. This is the entrepreneur that you were telling me about? Okay.
Yeah. So
very cool.
No, I'm with you. I definitely see some, last week went to a concert, your musically inclined person, Zach Williams.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was 2 years. I mean, that we tried to have this concert. I downloaded the tickets the night, an hour before the concert, and I was like, man, we bought these tickets 21 months ago.
Yeah, because that was right before COVID that he was supposed to come.
Yeah, broke right April.
I forgot about that, yeah.
But no, I mean, it was pretty powerful to, my teenage daughters went, and there was just a number of teenagers, kids their age, boys, girls. Right. It was awesome to see them. But one thing, I mean, Zach's probably biggest hit, Fear is a Liar?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and you almost quoted that verbatim a few minutes ago right here. So interesting times we live in. So
for sure. And I was going to say something else about students. One thing that I've noticed about the younger generation is that authenticity seems to be a very important thing to them. I think they can tell if you don't believe what you're telling them. So what has happened is these kids that I have seen that have come to grow closer to Christ and stuff, and I got great leaders in my youth ministry. Like, I always say they're the best leaders ever, but we've got some just leaders that are just real with the kids. They're authentic with them and stuff. And they really appreciate that. And I think they see and hear stuff that's going on, whether it's in the news or whatever is going on. And they just, I don't know, they're real skeptical when you can show them something that's real. I mean, how much stuff do we see around the world that you look at and you go, they don't really believe what they're saying. They don't really believe that.
Yeah. We've talked about that on an episode here.
Just about every night on the news, you look at some of the leaders of this nation. It's like, you honestly don't believe the crap that's coming out of your mouth.
There's no way you can believe what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people out there, how do you vote? We're not going to get sidetracked on that. But how do you vote for that person when they? But it's about having absolute truth, right? You got to have the absolute truth in your own heart. You got to know what your absolute truth is, and then elect leaders that fit that mold. I mean, nobody's going to fit it perfectly, per se, but
sure. And I think in spiritually speaking, again, because I do think I'm trying to divide them up here because I know politically speaking, I think we're probably in a different place than that on that list that you read there, at least spiritually. Because spiritually, I think the kids and stuff like that are like they're seeing an authentic faith and stuff. Hopefully that it changes their perspective. And that's what the early church did. Is it wasn't that they were preaching a message that they didn't abide by. They lived by it 100%. I got to be honest with you guys. In the last maybe 2 or 3 years, some of my spiritual heroes have fallen. and I don't say their names. I mean, they're in the news and stuff like that, but some guys that I greatly respected, you find out that they're preaching this message that behind the scenes they're living completely different. And it breaks my heart because I'm like, man, you know, it stinks for that person that they allow themselves to become engulfed in their sin like that. But also, how many people are now doubting everything that person has said? You know, I'm not super old, you know, but from what I've read and hear about, you know, like Christianity in our country over the last 100 years, maybe we've done and said some things that we wish we could take back, you know, how we treat certain people. I think we do tend to focus in on certain sins maybe and elevate them. And I think sometimes that's a problem because the people that you're alienated, they might feel alienated if you're specifically talking about that. You know, it kills me that we'll talk about certain sins, but then we ignore others. I'm like, no, we gotta, you know, let's be consistent here, you know, and that consistency leads to authenticity. It's going to take us as Christians, like our government will not save us spiritually. No, there's no way. The government will never step in. In fact, when governments and Christianity team up, it tends to have a pretty negative effect.
It goes the wrong way.
Yeah. You see it with the Crusades. You see it with all this stuff.
Not a good outcome.
Yeah, exactly. And so the government will never save us. It's going to take us as the church to rise up and live authentic Christian lives. Like, just live the way the Bible says. I know them. I'm in my life, I've seen people who I respected come to find out they were never practicing what they preached. Mm-hmm. And it kind of takes a hit. And I think that's probably happened a lot in our country over the last however many years where people are like, man, I mean, you know, the old televangelists that are preaching, if you want to get saved, send me $20 in the mail and stuff. And it's a black eye to Christianity. Yeah. I don't know if you remember that there was a Baptist church that would picket military funerals. I don't know if you remember this, but they would hold up signs that say, God hates dead soldiers. God hates homosexuals.
You know, I think I remember that.
I forget what their name is, but they're technically a Baptist church, which I'm just like, oh, man, because I'm from a Baptist church as well. I'm like, we're not part of the same group here, man. But people see those kind of people, and they go, oh, that's what Christianity is. And you go, oh, my goodness. So essentially, we need to redefine what Christianity is in this country. We have to live it accurately. They base their faith, like non-Christians will base Christianity on how Christians act, which is a terrible thing to base it on because we all make mistakes, right? We all sin and stuff. But
well, that's just it. Yeah. Sin is everywhere, and included the people in the church, right? Nobody's perfect, so it's going to happen, right? It's just how we respond to it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a Christian because I don't sin. I'm a Christian because I sin.
Right.
Yeah, I love that when I make a mistake, God will be there with open arms, ready to forgive me every single time.
That's a great point. And for a lot of people, that takes years of understanding, right? And we live in a country that information at our fingertips and we want everything now. Right. Part of your spiritual journey or your spiritual walk is immersing yourself, surrounding yourself with the word, with people that live the word.
And immersing yourself with the word is big time. Like, especially if you consider that your standard of truth, then that's what's important. Kids that I talk to that fight depression and they fight like just negative attitudes about themselves. Like a lot of kids are down on themselves. You know, how could God ever love a kid like me? How, you know, God could never forgive me for what I've done in the past. And we always tell them like, hey, look, that's the gospel. That's why Jesus died. He died because we were in need of this Savior. And so I always tell these kids, I'm like, look, if you're believing that stuff, you're listening to the wrong voices. I think we can all agree, like how many voices out there are we listening to that are leading us? Yeah, exactly. You just hold up your cell phone. Yeah. I mean, we've got information at our fingertips. They say there's more technology in your phone than there was in the first shuttle that went to space, you know, crazy. And you think, man, that's crazy. So much technology.
So that phone could put somebody on the moon.
Yeah, probably.
Well, here's the first
Let's
group.
do it. Let's have some fun.
The first group of civilians that went into space, 2 weeks ago, they said they controlled nothing inside that aircraft.
Oh, wow.
They were just passengers. Basically, I don't want to oversimplify it, but there was basically one button kind of said home.
Right.
Like if something went wrong, they were told, hit this, and the thing will turn around and bring you back.
That's that simple.
That terrifies me, by the way. If I was on that ship, I'd say I need to have some control here in case something goes wrong.
No, this has been awesome, Matt. We appreciate you coming on the show. I feel like we've got to end it in prayer. Do you mind saying a prayer for our country?
Oh, man, I'd love to.
Listeners out there?
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Sweet. Let's bow our heads. God, we thank you so much for this day. I thank you for the opportunity that I've got to come on this show with these two awesome guys. And Lord, ultimately, the thing that I pray for the most is that our country can come to know who you are. We've seen how things are going now with the pandemic, with just the division that we see in our country. And God, we are in a place more than ever where we need you. And so my prayer is that for anybody listening to this podcast, Lord, just help us to seek you out, Lord, to realize that there is one truth, and that is your word, and that, God, the best thing we can do in life, the best life we can have is to follow you, God. Doesn't mean everything's going to go great. Doesn't mean we're never going to mess up again, but that's the beauty of having you as our Savior, is that we can just come to you anytime with any mistakes that we've made, and that you will forgive us no matter what. So, God, we pray for our country. We pray for good leaders to rise up and that can help us get back on track. God, we love you so much, and we pray this in your name. Amen.
Can I get an amen?
Can I get an amen? That's one of our lines here on this show. So, again, Matt, thank you so much. Hang with us here. We're heading to a break, but Scooter's got some
airing of grievances. Scooter's up. Thank you for joining us, and keep up the good fight.
Thanks, guys.
God bless.
Hey, American Exceptionalism podcast listeners. Yes, you. If you're wondering, how do you get started in voiceovers? This is where you stop wondering, because I'm the guy that can teach you how. My name is Ron Allen. I own Big Voice Productions, and I have trained over 500 people in the art and the business of voiceover. Imagine using your voice at home to serve customers who will pay you great money to voice their messages, which could be telephone messages, radio commercials, TV commercials, internet videos. The sky is the limit. How about audiobooks? You want to find out more? Check me out at bigvoiceproductions.com, and let's get you started on a career in voiceover.
This episode of Airing of Grievances is brought to you by Team Vagisil Racing, where we're itching to win.
With the airing of grievances. I got a lot of problems with you people. Now, you're going to hear about it.
All right, we're back. My friend Scooter is all worked up today. I think middle school golf is on his last nerve. Am I right?
Oh, again, no, it's not middle school golf. It's what happens after middle school golf.
What's that?
I mean, trying to feed these kids on the way home.
You just chuck some bologna and cheese sandwiches at them, right?
Yeah, that thought did cross my mind. I think that's plan B next year.
Go old school.
Yeah.
All right. Well, where's the clock? Where's the oh, it's right there.
Where's that?
It's made in China.
The dream ski. Beep, 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 beep.
We've been doing it the hard way the whole time. It's got a button right there. It queues up 5 minutes. All right, here we go. You ready?
Gotta be smarter than the dream ski. Smarter than that guy in China that made this thing.
All right, my man.
Whoa.
You're off.
All right. I've had this experience, personal experience, then I've actually talked to some different people, and they're all saying the same thing. So it's time to tee off on an episode of Airing of Grievances about this. We all know in this country, for the past 18 months, we fought the COVID pandemic, right? And then it almost became an excuse for this country. We blame everything on COVID. Everything is COVID's fault. It's COVID's fault. It's COVID's fault. Now we got this situation where everybody's short-staffed, right? So we're finally getting back out. We're finally getting, to enjoy things, the finer points of life, and getting out and share friendships and everything. But now every place you go into has got a sign on the front door. Please be patient. We're short-staffed, right? So that's almost like this is becoming an excuse. So the last 3 weeks after middle school golf matches, and for all those listeners out there, golf is probably one of the most time-consuming sports out there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. 18 holes, you might as well, that's 4 hours.
Yeah. So, just to play a 9-hole match, so get a kid on the bus, get him to the golf course, which isn't that far away, get him back home, took almost 6.5 hours for a 9-hole match.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So anyway, we're coming home a couple weeks ago, pull in. I sit in the drive-through because of the short staff in 11 minutes, and we move one car. So I was like, all right, let's go up to this next place up the street. Go up to the next place up the street. Sorry, due to short staff, we closed at 7 p.m.
How many kids you trying to get in to feed?
My one daughter.
Oh, I thought you were taking the whole team.
No,
okay.
That'd be ridiculous. But yeah, we'd be there all night trying to feed an entire team. So anyway, pull up to the next place. Sorry, because the short staff, we closed at 7 o'clock. Now, there are 3 people sitting on the curb eating some sandwiches, employees there, but yet they're short-staffed and they have to close at 7 o'clock, right? So anyway, last night we walk into the Golden Arches.
Okay.
The drive-through is around the building.
Right.
So I said, let's just run inside. It'll be quicker.
Yeah.
All right, we walk in. It is a zoo in there.
Yeah.
There are people everywhere. Well, not people everywhere, but there are orders everywhere. I'm like, what in the heck is going on here? So try to go up and order. The person says, sorry, that we want you to use the kiosks. Okay. Well, then she says, we're short-staffed. We want you to use the kiosks.
So yeah, like at the airport, everybody's
you
got
go
an
up
individual.
and punch in this and that, which makes even thing harder. My youngest daughter, I mean, she likes sandwiches a certain way, so now we got to take stuff off and add stuff and
Talk
blah,
about
blah, blah.
a super spreader event. Everybody's running their grubby hands all over the sand.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's nasty.
Yeah, but we're wearing masks, right? We got our masks on, right? So anyway, we order. I get my ticket. It says 8:11.
$8?
No, 8:11 p.m.
Yeah, okay.
We got our food at almost 8:40.
There is nothing fast about fast food.
No, it was ridiculous. No, the drive-through still wrapped around the building. I can see it, but there are orders everywhere. So then everything was so disorganized. She's saying they're short-staffed. I counted 13 people back there behind the counter. They had so many people they were almost in each other's way. But then it hit me because of a comment a friend of mine made. What is causing these delays is freaking DoorDash.
Yeah.
Because people are too damn lazy to get off their couch and drive to wherever they want to go get something to eat. I had a friend of mine said that his kids paid $9 for a large fry and a small Frosty at Wendy's for DoorDash. Because they're too damn lazy to get off the couch and drive. He said they lived 1.2 miles from the Wendy's that they ordered this from.
$10 for, what'd you say, a Frosty and a fry?
Yeah.
And a hamburger or just Frosty?
No, just a fry and a Frosty.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And I'm watching this. So a friend of mine over the weekend says he likes to go to his local coffee shop. The line is out the door, down the street, around the corner, and they go in there and they've got plenty of help, but all they're doing is trying to fill these damn DoorDash orders, and they're not taking care of the people that are right in front of them.
I'm with you.
It's ridiculous.
That is.
We have become a nation of just laziness.
You think they would take care of the customers that bothered to get out, get off the couch, come out, brave the dangerous world that we live in called COVID, and come to your restaurant, but you got to stand in line behind that. I'm with you. I agree with you. That's ridiculous.
I mean, it was just absolute ridiculous. And then we're beeping up here. I'll wrap this up here pretty quick. But then, I finally get a cup to get my drink. Then you got the self-serve. And then, of course, it's out of ice.
Yeah.
I almost walked behind the damn counter and started pushing people around to get my own damn ice. I mean, it's just that ridiculous.
Woo, here come the police. Woo, woo, woo.
And then the manager, we're listening to the manager yell at talk to the other employees. And she said it's been this way since COVID. And she said it's all because of DoorDash. If you think about it, I guess I'll give them a pass on this one because you're basically, who knows how many orders you're going to get.
It's almost like you got to set up another window. Like you got the drive-up window, you got the counter, and then you got the DoorDash. And DoorDash, you got to stand in line until we serve our
Well, then I'm sitting there thinking,
customers.
I mean, as bad as it was for us, I watched all these orders. I mean, I watched probably 6 or 7 bags of food sit there for over 30 minutes. I mean, those poor DoorDash people. I mean, it isn't good food to begin with.
No. And you're putting another layer in the process to where they can mess with your food.
I don't know. I've complained about brands before, but hell with DoorDash, man. Get off your couch, people.
I guess we're not going to get a sponsorship from DoorDash.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that'll be the day.
All right. That wraps it up. Airing your grievances. Scooter's hopefully a little less stressed.
We'll catch you next time. Scooter here with a little Scooter testimonial. In the previous segment, guest on the program, Pastor Matt Clark, he did a wonderful job of talking about where Christianity is at, and he actually wrote a book about it, and I thought I'd take a couple minutes here and tell you about it. So Matt really looks at the concept of how we define words and how that matters in our lives. More than ever, believers need to have a clear understanding of what it means to be a Christian, and if you lack this knowledge, it can lead to a misrepresentation of who Christ is. Can we honestly say as Americans that the American church has correctly defined Christianity? Or are we more focused with how God defines the faith or how we define it for ourselves? The book is titled Redefinition, and Matt focuses on 7 key biblical concepts whose meanings have drifted over time. Tackling each concept honestly, openly, and compassionately, he shows how the following terms have transformed from Scripture's original intent and have fallen victim to what Matt calls redefinition. Truth. What is the standard by which you live your life? Belief. What truly leads to salvation? Sin. Does it matter if we offend God? Worship. Does your lifestyle show that God is worthy? Love. How do we treat each other as believers? Evangelism. Does your faith exist outside the church walls or on Sunday morning? The abundant life. What should we expect of the Christian life? I can tell you that this book challenges believers to see Christ in the church correctly. We can't be passive any longer. We can no longer be silent. We must boldly stand up and proclaim to the world an accurate image of Christ. It's a great read. You can find it on Amazon. Go ahead and pick yourself up a copy. Really dive in and study the words that Matt has laid out in the book. Catch you next time on another episode of American Exceptionalism.